talking about the latest update to mySQM Plus version 139. I've changed a lot of the names associated with options. So on the left here we see what used to be in version 138 and lower, and on the right hand side we have the name changes for version 139, and this is done so that I can make better sense of the code at times. So display type, driver type, all these will happen to be in the config.sys file. So this is the controller config file, and I'm just coming down here. So we had SQM server redefined, and I've introduced some things here. Let me scroll down. Okay, for the OTA over the year updating, I've changed this now to OTA type because I'm going to add another OTA type soon as an alternative to Elegant OTA, because Elegant OTA uses a heap loads of program space. And the next thing, of course, is RC type you've seen before. I've made display type and driver type, and these can either be the display text OLED or graphics OLED, and I'm currently working on another different display type to be added later. So those are the changes that have been made to the controller config file. Another change that you'll notice is that a whole lot of the machine states which actually run the mySQM Plus controller have been changed, and I've done this for a purpose. We'll just go through some of these. Right, so here we are in the defines file, and as you saw, a lot of them have gone, they're no longer there. And I was thinking to myself, I decided to make these ones in machine states and put all the others in a different option states. And the reason why these are here is primarily I looked at the things where the updates are quite critical. The changing of those things is very critical. So you can't really wait for things to happen, and it's critical as to whether the amount of delay involved in responding to those types of requests. And then I put everything else into another bucket called option states, and the reason for this is these I'm deeming as non-critical. So it really doesn't matter if we're a second too late or even 5 seconds too late. It's not critical to the operation of mySQM and the values concerned. Now, one change that has been done to version 139 is that the units of measurement for distance and temperature are brought out here, and you can just change these things on the fly. So if we go back to temperature unit, and I've got a web browser here, and so I've got an ambient temperature of 25.0, and I go back here, that's temperature unit, and jump into you can see that it's completely changed and now is showing the Fahrenheit view. And what we've also done is when you go in here to have a look at MQTT, you see that it now follows the temperature mode or distance mode that is being done. So let me just go back because those figures are in Fahrenheit. So let me just go back and we'll change it back to the default Celsius. I've also made changes to MQTT so that all the variables settings that are published by mySQM Plus to a broker now obey the rules concerning the distance unit and the temperature unit. So if we were to have a look at, for example, the web page, you can clearly see that these figures here are in Celsius, which match what we have here. So if I change it now to, let's say, Fahrenheit, and go and have a look, you can immediately see these values have changed. I've got MQTT running here. Ambient is 18.25, which is Celsius. And if we, sorry, let's go and have a look down here. We can see here that the last message sent by the controller to a broker has the ambient value of 18.25, and we know that that's the Celsius version. So all we have to do is wait for the MQTT to catch up. So the ambient value here and the message that just arrived is 64.85, dew point 45.9, which is what we would expect to hear. And as I said, the previous message up to this point was using Celsius, so we know that that's actually working now for MQTT. And the same for distance modes as well. A lot of the code in the management server has been replaced. An example of this is I have here an old version of management server dating back to, I think, version 138, and the usual declarations like this, and scroll down a bit more. Here we have all the HTML code sitting here in the management server, and if I was to have a look at the same thing, you can see that it's all gone. So we used to have admin 1, admin this, SQM server, TCP IP. You can see the heaps of code there. So looking at, here's the old version of admin1.html, and you can see that there's very little HTML code in here. And looking at the new version, you can see that the HTML code has been transferred from the management server into the actual HTML file itself. So because of those changes in the management server, the space required by the management server is now reduced, and all the HTML code has gone into the actual file. It's in file admin1 and so on. Repeat that for all the admin files. Has saved quite a bit of space, but there have been even more changes associated with these HTML files. So the old navigation buttons on the bottom have been replaced with some links, not text, but actual links to pages. It's been replaced, and the order's all changed as well. And so they're changing from the buttons to these text links saves about 30% of the page. So the pages should load a bit quicker. There's some new methods that have been placed into the management server which handles all the scripts which use HTML, XHTML to update things. There's now one called getNavBar, and it loads that navbar that you see, and what it does is it caches it. So we'll just pull up the code, and this is it. So it loads the file, it then loads it into underscore navbar, which is a string, and that works fine. And what it also means is that the navigation or the navigation part of the page is separate, and we don't have to keep updating each admin page as the buttons etc. change. And you can update these things on the fly, so I can easily add on or change the navigation footer just by a command. So for example, if I reload the navbar using a code called /ln as the URI that I need to put, it loads in the new navbar, and every time you access a page from that point on, away you go. It gets the new navbar. So I want to just come down to an actual page. Here's the reboots page, but you'll get the idea. So scrolling down here to where it actually manages the building of the page, builds the various components on the page by replacing fields with actual text. And towards the end of it here, this is the bit which adds the navbar contents to the actual administration page, which is then sent back to the client. Another thing that's been added in 139, I think it's called hover messages. So whereas in previous cases we might have had the actual text associated with what the range is, now when you hover over the text, it will tell you that interval here for web query ranges from 60 seconds to 3,600 seconds, and so everywhere where there's a range you'll find this hover message. A page that has been added is a reboots page, and if I was to click on that, this will allow you to completely stop and restart servers or clients. I haven't finished, there's a few more to be added, but as you can see, the controller, debug server, etc., you can instead of using stop start, you can go to reboots and just click whatever you want. And if you were to click on something, it tells you, you want to reboot it? Are you sure? And if you click OK, it'll actually reboot it. So previously, if we were looking at Service 1, you also had ESP Now and SQM server. I've renamed some of these navigation aids at the bottom. So if I now have a look, I've got ESP Now, SQM server, plus all the OTA stuff from a different page, and all put them here onto the Service 2 page. And the web query and with Underground used to be split across other pages as well. I believe the OTA was moved from the miscellaneous to this particular page here. Sitting on miscellaneous, we've now got units of measurement, which came from the options page, and you won't find them on options anymore, of course. And so there's been a slight rearrangement of the information and whereabouts it's located. At the moment, these names are highly likely to stay, and there's a little bit of work still left on the file system to accommodate those changes. The OTA has moved from the miscellaneous page to Service 2. And so that's ESP now, OTA and SQM server. And you notice here that there's now text displayed elegant OTA. And in the next release, you should be able to change what OTA type you're actually running, whether it's elegant OTA or its replacement. And so that's why we now have the specific OTA that's being used. That name is also displayed on OTA, so that change has been done. So once the alternative OTA is finished, it will just be able to plug it in quite smoothly. Another change that's happened is on the cloud. This was the cloud model. And I've added here the ability to both load and save these settings, and you can just give it whatever name you want here, winter, summer, whatever, and you can load that profile and all these figures will then update, or once you've got the figures set, you could save it with a new name. So that now mirrors exactly what we're doing in the Windows app. So to use this, all you need to do is specify a file name, and I'll just click save, and that will save those settings into file name.json. And if I was to have a look at that particular file, this is what it looks like. It's actually a JSON string which consists of the key value pairs. This is the actual file name.json. Cloud flag percent has got a value of 30 and so on. And I can easily change these things, so I'll do that now. And I'll only change a few of them like this, and then I can reload the previous settings, and you can see now it's reverted back to what the previous settings are. So that should prove very useful. So moving on to the NTP page, I have added a Sync Now button that you can actually use to sync the real-time clock to the NTP at any particular time. At the moment, the real-time clock is only synced when an NTP update occurs. So at the moment I get that set to 30, which is a value of 30 minutes. So the range is 20 to 60. So if, for example, you were using 60 and you notice something quite wrong, you just click Sync Now and you get the very latest value at that point in time. The web server, the code that puts together the home page of the web server and delivers it to a client, this has been completely rewritten. And basically the page is constructed on the fly. It's quite a large page as well. in terms of, 10k is a lot. And so what it does is it goes through and checks whether or not these components should be on the web page, because you know that you can customize the web page and not display certain settings and values. So, and here we can see the code that handles whether or not it's in Celsius or Fahrenheit, etc. So if it's Celsius, then the value of jet ambient is in Celsius by default. So, and if it's in Fahrenheit, if it's not Celsius, then it will get the ambient value and convert it to Fahrenheit. And that also applies to distance and other temperature values. So you can see the code's pretty similar. And what that looks like when we put it all together, here we go, is like this. And so if we were to negate certain elements on the page and say, let's not display those things, let's go to home page customization. And so this is the home page of the web server, and we know that you can customize the various elements and decide what to enable, disable, etc. So let's just go and enable a few. Because this is a large page, possibly the biggest page size, it does take a bit of processing time. If I go back to the web server page and I refresh this, you can see now that that the amount of information on the page is significantly reduced. And I altered both query states, web query and with underground. And you'll notice that some of the major things here have to do with read wait, read response, pass response, and they now have a restart state. The thing about this is, and they both operate in an identical manner, is that once we've sent the data, in previous code we used to wait for a response and not do anything else. We'd send and sit there and wait, and that could be anywhere between 1 second all the way up to 7 or 8 seconds for response. And because it was written in a synchronous manner, that is, we entered this machine state of start, of send, and then we stayed in the code. After sending, we went straight to reading the response. The problem with that is the response doesn't come immediately back, and so I had to change the code so that it can do other things while it's waiting for the response, and that leads to a much better, more responsive controller. So with the underground and web query machine engines, insert this read wait, and it waits basically up to 10 seconds for a response. If a response does arrive, it checks periodically for a response read wait, and if there is a response, then we read the response, and I've separated both the reading and the passing of the response into separate stages. So we read the response, and then later on the next state will be this, and so in the pass response we now have the ability to check whether or not that response is a bad response or a valid response and act accordingly. So we've now got the ability to treat this in an async manner, and time's no longer important. The other thing that I noticed in coding this is that if there is no response from the read, the previous code didn't handle it properly, and also in this past response. So all the delays have been taken care of in there, and at the most, if something goes haywire, it will only delay for 1 second while it restarts itself. So that's a bonus. Right, I now want to talk about Wi-Fi events. In previous code for mySQM Plus, we actually used a machine state to check in the main loop whether or not it was connected, and if not connected, to try and reconnect. But this can really be automated using a Wi-Fi event handler. And so what we do is we create a callback which will be called whenever the station that mySQM Plus is running, whenever it disconnects or loses the connection, it triggers this callback, and this callback will attempt the reconnection, and so that's pretty nifty. There are other event handlers as well which can automate some of those things, and I've started this work. It works, but I need to do a little bit more. When a station connects, it generates a callback to Wi-Fi station connected, and this will print out, yes, I'm connected, and to what I'm connected. And we also, when a connection takes place, is established, the mySQM Plus controller receives an IP address, and so that is also an event, and we call it Wi-Fi got IP. So when that event happens, we can then receive that IP address and store it or print it out, etc. And so that's currently what we're doing. And how this stuff is set up is, let's just do a find, looking for event. Right, so here, oh, sorry, that's not the place. I was trying to, here they are. So this sets auto reconnect true, which handles that Wi-Fi disconnect for us, and these are the code associated with the connection event and the IP address event. There's also one other thing that's been done, and I'm still playing with this. What it does is it sets the Wi-Fi transmit power of the mySQM Plus controller. And so at the moment, it's pre-selectable, and it might be that that will go onto a web page where you can change those things. But at the moment, it sets the transmit power. There's no way of setting receive power because of the fact that if a device is transmitting to you, you have no control over what that sending device transmit power is. So anyway, this is those are two extra features which are now in mySQM Plus.